May had always felt a quiet emptiness in her life, one that city noise and constant social demands could never fill. After years of working in a bustling office in Shanghai, she finally decided to take a break. She needed a place far away, somewhere no one could find her, where she could think, reflect, and maybe discover something she had long forgotten about herself. She had heard of a remote region in southern China, where cliffs plunged dramatically into rivers and valleys, where old villages had been abandoned and forests grew thick with life. The stories described houses perched precariously on cliff edges, homes that had survived decades untouched, holding secrets of those who once lived there. To May, these tales were irresistible. She longed not only for solitude but for a sense of adventure, for something unexpected to break the monotony of her life. After several days of travel by train and a rattling bus ride along narrow mountain roads, May arrived at a small village at the edge of a deep gorge. The villagers were friendly but wary of strangers. Their faces held the marks of long lives spent in hard labor, and their eyes, though kind, carried an unspoken caution. May stayed in a modest inn, her room overlooking the misty gorge. Every morning, she watched the sun rise over jagged cliffs, the fog rolling in and out like a silent tide. She felt her mind begin to settle, her restless thoughts slowing with each passing day. One afternoon, while wandering the forest paths above the gorge, May noticed something unusual. Half hidden by thick bamboo and twisted vines, there was the roof of a house, just barely visible through the trees. It seemed to cling to the edge of the cliff, almost defying gravity. Her heart raced. She had not expected to find anything this close to the village, and yet there it was, untouched by time. Curiosity took hold of her. She had to see it up close. The path was narrow and steep, lined with moss-covered stones and tree roots that twisted like serpents. Each step required careful attention, and May's excitement mingled with a hint of fear. She paused often, catching her breath and gazing down at the swirling river below. The water glimmered in the sunlight, but it was distant, almost like another world. She felt as if she were crossing a boundary, leaving the familiar and entering a hidden domain that had been waiting for someone to discover it. Finally, after what felt like hours, she reached the house. It was small, made of weathered wood with a sloping roof covered in moss. Windows, once clear, were now opaque with grime, and the door hung slightly ajar, creaking softly in the wind. May's hand trembled slightly as she pushed it open. The scent of aged wood and damp earth filled her nose. Dust motes floated in the sunbeams that streamed through broken windows. It was as if the house had been asleep for decades, waiting for someone to wake it. Inside, the room was sparse. A wooden table, a chair, and a simple bed with a faded quilt were all that remained. In the corner, an old wardrobe leaned against the wall, its doors slightly warped. May ran her fingers over the rough wood. She imagined the lives that had passed through this house, the laughter, the arguments, the quiet moments of solitude. But there was something else, something that made her pause, a faint, almost imperceptible sound, like a whisper of movement behind the walls. Her curiosity deepened. She approached the wardrobe and opened it fully. Inside were shelves lined with yellowed papers, small trinkets, and a few folded pieces of cloth. As she sifted through them, she found a small leather-bound journal. The cover was cracked, the pages brittle, but the handwriting was still legible. It told the story of a woman who had once lived here, long ago, who had hidden away from the world for reasons that were never fully explained. May read each entry carefully, captivated by the raw emotion and the intensity of the life described. It spoke of love, loss, fear, and a secret that had been kept buried, even from the villagers who lived nearby. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the room. May felt a strange connection to the woman in the journal, as if their lives were entwined across time. She carefully placed the journal back in the wardrobe and looked around the room again. Her eyes fell on a small trapdoor near the back wall, almost completely covered by a threadbare rug. It was unusual, out of place, and beckoned to her. For a moment, she hesitated. Something deep inside warned her that whatever lay beneath might change everything she thought she knew. With a deep breath, she lifted the rug and opened the trapdoor. A narrow staircase descended into darkness, the smell of damp earth rising from below. May's heart pounded. She felt fear, certainly, but also a thrill she had not felt in years. This was what she had been searching for, not just escape from her own life, but discovery, mystery, and perhaps a revelation she could never have imagined. Lighting a small lantern she had brought, May stepped carefully down the stairs. The walls were rough, carved directly into the cliff, and the air grew cooler and heavier with each step. She reached the bottom, and found herself in a cavernous space that seemed to extend far beyond the house above. Strange markings were etched into the walls, symbols she could not understand but that seemed to pulse with some hidden energy. There were old artifacts scattered around, pots, tools, and objects whose purpose was unclear. It was like stepping into a different world, one hidden beneath the cliffs and forests, a world forgotten by time. For hours, she explored the space, documenting everything she saw. Her lantern cast flickering shadows that danced across the walls, giving the impression that the cavern was alive. At the far end, she noticed a small chest, carefully tucked into an alcove. It was locked, but the wood was worn, and the lock seemed brittle. With a bit of effort, she managed to open it. Inside were papers, letters, and old photographs. The images showed people she did not recognize, dressed in clothing from decades ago, smiling in moments of joy that felt frozen in time. Among them was a letter addressed to the discoverer of truth, a message that seemed meant for her, though she had never seen it before. The letter spoke of a hidden heritage, of a responsibility to protect knowledge and stories that had been buried to keep them safe from those who would misuse them. May's mind raced. Everything she had experienced that day, the journey through the forest, the house on the cliff, the journal, and now this chest, felt like pieces of a puzzle she had been unknowingly seeking her entire life. She realized that the loneliness she had felt was not emptiness but a preparation. This discovery, this hidden world, had chosen her. She was meant to find it, to learn from it, and perhaps to change her life in ways she could not yet comprehend. As night fell over the cliffs, May climbed back up to the house, her lantern now casting a soft glow in the darkness. She sat by the edge of the cliff, looking out over the valley below, feeling a connection to both the past and the present. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of purpose and wonder. She had come seeking solitude, but she had found something much greater, a secret that had the power to transform her life forever. And as the wind whispered through the trees and the river shimmered far below, May knew this was only the beginning. The hidden cliff house had more stories to tell, more mysteries to reveal. And she was ready to uncover every one of them. The morning sun broke through the mist as May awoke in the small room of the cliff house. Her mind still raced with the discoveries from the night before. The journal, the hidden staircase, the mysterious chest, everything seemed unreal, yet every detail was vivid in her memory. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had stumbled into a story that had been waiting for her all along. After a simple breakfast of rice and tea she found in the old kitchen, May returned to the trapdoor. Today, she wanted to explore further, to understand the cavern beneath the cliff and the hidden messages left for her. She carried the lantern carefully and descended the stairs once more, the wooden steps creaking under her weight. The faint smell of earth and age greeted her like an old friend, familiar yet strange. At the bottom, she paused to examine the markings on the walls. They were intricate, almost like a language of symbols, spirals, and lines, carved long ago. Some seemed decorative, while others had a more deliberate, meaningful arrangement. May realized that the symbols formed patterns she didn't yet understand, perhaps a story told in stone. She traced her fingers lightly over one spiral, and a shiver ran down her spine. It was as if the wall itself was alive, holding memories from centuries past. Moving deeper into the cavern, she reached a section she hadn't explored the previous night. It was larger, like a small hall, with high ceilings and walls that glimmered faintly, wet from underground moisture. On the floor were shallow indentations that seemed to form a path, guiding her through the space. She followed it, feeling an unspoken pull, as though the cavern itself wanted her to go forward. At the far end, she discovered another chest, smaller than the first, tucked into a stone alcove. This one was different. It was sealed with an intricate lock shaped like a flower. May examined it, running her fingers along the petals. The craftsmanship was delicate, unlike anything she had seen in modern times. She remembered a phrase from the journal, The key lies not in your hands, but in your heart. At first, she didn't understand, but then a thought occurred to her. Perhaps the chest could be opened only by someone with pure intention, someone who had come seeking truth, not treasure. Taking a deep breath, she placed her hands on the chest and closed her eyes. She thought of the woman in the journal, of the people whose letters she had found, and of her own journey to this place. She focused on the desire to understand, to honor the history she had discovered. A faint click echoed through the cavern. Startled, May opened her eyes, and the lock had turned. The chest was now accessible. Inside were documents, carefully folded maps, and a small wooden box. The maps depicted the region in extraordinary detail, showing secret paths, hidden caves, and the cliff houses themselves. The documents were letters, some addressed to the guardian of secrets, others more like diaries, recounting the lives of people who had hidden knowledge they could not share with the outside world. May realized that the cliff house was not just a home but part of a network, a hidden archive that preserved truths about the past. The wooden box intrigued her the most. It was carved with tiny symbols, each one familiar from the walls of the cavern. Inside, she found a set of small, delicate objects, rings, amulets and pendants, each with a unique symbol etched into it. May lifted one of the pendants and noticed a soft glow emanating from its center. It was faint but undeniable. She felt a warmth spread through her fingers, a connection that went beyond the physical. Somehow, these objects were alive with meaning, carrying energy from the people who had made them long ago. Hours passed as she explored the contents of the chest. Every piece she touched seemed to speak to her, to awaken memories she had never known she carried. She felt a growing sense of responsibility. This was not merely a personal discovery. It was a duty. The knowledge, the objects, and the history were meant to be protected, and she was now their guardian. Suddenly, she heard a sound from above, the creak of the trapdoor shifting, a faint shuffle. Her heart leapt. Was someone else in the house? Could they have followed her here? She gripped the lantern tightly and moved cautiously toward the stairs. "Hello," she called softly. The only response was the echo of her voice bouncing off the stone walls. She ascended slowly, each step careful, until she reached the top. The room was empty. The wind outside rustled through the broken windows, carrying with it the scent of the forest. May exhaled. Perhaps it had just been the house settling, or the wind playing tricks. As she sat down, she realized that the experience had changed her. Her loneliness, which had once been a heavy weight on her chest, now felt different. It was a kind of freedom, a space to think, to feel, and to connect with something larger than herself. She understood that the house and the cavern had chosen her for a reason. She was not simply a visitor, she was a participant in a story that spanned generations, a story that she now had a responsibility to continue. Determined to learn more, she decided to return to the village and seek out elders who might know something about the house and the people who had lived there. May had learned to approach strangers with caution, but now she felt ready. She walked carefully back along the narrow path, keeping her eyes on the mossy stones beneath her feet. The sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows across the cliffs. She felt as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what she would do next. The villagers were initially hesitant to speak with her. Some remembered the house, some didn't. Those who did spoke in hushed tones, warning her that the cliff house had always been a place of mystery. They told her that families had vanished, that travelers had come and gone without explanation, and that the house held secrets best left undisturbed. But May listened carefully, noting every detail. She realized that the warnings were not meant to scare her away but to prepare her. She was stepping into a world that required respect, knowledge, and care. That night, back in her inn, May examined the items she had taken from the chest. She studied the symbols, the letters, and the maps, trying to understand their connections. Slowly, patterns emerged. The pendants seemed to correspond to locations on the maps. The letters told stories of people who had faced challenges and had hidden knowledge to protect. May realized that the cliff house and its hidden cavern were part of a larger network, a system designed to safeguard the history and wisdom of generations. She was not alone in this responsibility. She was linked to the people who had come before her, whose lives had been shaped by secrecy, courage, and the desire to protect what was precious. As she drifted off to sleep that night, May felt a profound sense of purpose. Her journey to this remote cliff house had begun as an escape, but it had become something far more significant. She was no longer a lonely woman wandering through the mountains. She was a guardian, a seeker of truth, and a bridge between the past and the present. And as the wind whispered through the trees outside, carrying the faint scent of moss and earth, she knew that the hidden cliff house had more to reveal. The secret she had begun to uncover was only the beginning, and she was ready to follow its path, wherever it might lead. The morning air in the village was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. May woke with a sense of urgency. The chest, the pendants, and the letters had opened a door to something larger than she had imagined. She knew she could not stay in the village indefinitely. The cliff house had more to reveal, and she had to return before the secrets were lost to time again. She packed a small bag with essentials: water, food, her lantern, the journal, and the maps from the chest. Each item felt heavier now, not physically but with the weight of responsibility. As she retraced the steep, narrow path through the forest, her mind raced with questions. Who had hidden this knowledge? Why had it been kept secret? And most importantly, why had it chosen her? The wind rustled through the trees, as if whispering encouragement, guiding her steps toward the hidden house above the cliff. Arriving at the house, May paused at the doorway, taking in the familiar sight of weathered wood and moss-covered roof. She felt a strange mix of comfort and tension. Inside, the air was cooler, carrying the scent of earth and old timber. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams, as if the house itself were alive, welcoming her return. With careful steps, she descended the trapdoor into the cavern below. The dim light of her lantern cast long shadows on the walls, revealing the familiar symbols etched into the stone. But today, she noticed something new, subtle markings that had gone unnoticed before. Small arrows and lines that seemed to create a map across the walls themselves, pointing deeper into the cavern. Following the symbols, she moved with a sense of purpose. The narrow stone path led to a part of the cavern she had never explored. Here, the air felt different, charged, almost electric, as though the space itself was waiting. And there, in a small alcove at the far end, she found it, a doorway carved into the cliff wall, concealed behind hanging vines and moss. It was almost invisible, yet she could sense its significance immediately. Her heart pounded. This had to be the final secret, the hidden truth that the chest and the pendants had been leading her toward. The doorway was small, requiring her to crouch as she entered. Beyond it, a spiral staircase descended into darkness. The air grew cooler and heavier with each step, carrying the scent of damp stone and something faintly metallic. May held her lantern high, illuminating the walls as she went. Symbols similar to those above decorated the staircase, glowing faintly in response to her presence. It was as if the cavern recognized her, acknowledged her intention, and was guiding her towards something extraordinary. At the bottom of the staircase, she entered a large chamber unlike anything she had ever seen. The walls were lined with shelves, carved directly from the stone, holding scrolls, books, and artifacts that glimmered under her lantern light. The objects seemed ancient, yet meticulously preserved. Some were tools, others ceremonial items, and a few looked like instruments designed to observe the stars or track natural events. May realized she had stumbled upon a hidden archive, a repository of knowledge and wisdom accumulated over centuries. In the center of the chamber was a pedestal, upon which rested a single, intricately carved box. It was larger than the previous chest, adorned with symbols she now recognized from the pendants. Her hands trembled as she approached it. She remembered the phrase from the first chest, "The key lies not in your hands, but in your heart." Closing her eyes, she placed her hands gently on the box and focused on the intention to learn, to honor, and to protect the knowledge contained within. Slowly, the box opened with a quiet click. Inside were letters, scrolls, and small relics, each carrying profound meaning. One scroll, written in careful calligraphy, described the purpose of the hidden network of cliff houses. Generations ago, A group of scholars and guardians had decided to preserve knowledge and protect it from those who might misuse it. They had hidden entire libraries, spiritual artifacts, and records of ancient wisdom in remote locations across China. The pendants and symbols were keys, guiding those with pure intentions to the hidden chambers. The guardians had believed that one day, someone like Mei would be ready to continue their mission. As she read, Mei felt a deep connection to the people who had created this secret world. Their dedication, courage, and foresight were awe-inspiring. They had risked everything to protect knowledge that could change lives, yet they had done so quietly, without seeking fame or reward. Mei realized that she was now part of this lineage, chosen to safeguard the knowledge and ensure it endured for future generations. Among the scrolls, she found one that addressed the discoverer, specifically. It spoke of the responsibility to protect the hidden archives, to use the knowledge wisely, and to ensure the lessons of the past were not lost. The message emphasized that the true power of the secret was not in the artifacts themselves but in the understanding and wisdom they carried. Mei felt the weight of this responsibility settle upon her shoulders. She was ready. She understood that her life would never be the same, and that the solitude she had once sought was now filled with purpose. As she explored further, she discovered personal items left by previous guardians, small keepsakes, letters, and journals detailing their experiences. Each one was a story of dedication, sacrifice, and discovery. Mei read them carefully, absorbing their lessons and feeling their presence guide her. The hidden network of cliff houses was more than just a collection of buildings. It was a living tradition, a community that transcended time and space. Hours passed as she explored, and the cavern seemed to respond to her presence. The faint glow from the symbols intensified, illuminating the walls with a soft, warm light. Mei felt a profound sense of belonging, as if she had finally found a place where she truly fit. The loneliness she had once felt was replaced by connection, understanding, and purpose. She was part of something larger, a story that had begun long before her and would continue long after. Before leaving the chamber, Mei carefully documented everything she had found. She made notes, sketched maps, and catalogued the artifacts. She knew that preserving this knowledge was essential, and that she could not rely solely on memory. The responsibility was immense, but it also filled her with determination. She was ready to embrace her new role as a guardian of the hidden cliff house and its secrets. Climbing back up the spiral staircase, Mei paused at the top to take in the view of the cavern she had explored. The flickering lantern light highlighted the intricate carvings on the walls, the symbols, and the shelves filled with artifacts. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for having been chosen to uncover this secret. The hidden cliff house had given her not only discovery but also a sense of purpose, belonging, and a connection to history that transcended her own life. As she emerged into the sunlight at the cliff house above, Mei looked out over the valley below. The river shimmered, the forest swayed gently in the wind, and the mist drifted across the cliffs. Everything seemed alive, vibrant, and full of possibility. She knew that her journey was far from over. There were more cliff houses, more secrets, and more lessons waiting to be discovered. But for now, she allowed herself a moment to breathe, to absorb the significance of what she had found, and to appreciate the path that had led her here. Mei understood that life would never be the same. She had come seeking solitude and escape, but she had found discovery, purpose, and a connection to something timeless. The cliff house had chosen her, and she was ready to embrace the responsibility it had entrusted to her. With a final glance at the hidden entrance below, she turned toward the forest path leading back to the village, her heart steady and her spirit strong. The secret of the cliff house had changed her life forever, and she was prepared to continue the journey it had begun.